75% of small business owners are actually concerned about their mental health. 56% of those that were polled that actually responded had actually been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or stress-related problems by a doctor or a mental health professional. In a post-pandemic world, they're fending for themselves. Many of them are working from home. I think it's one of the loneliest groups on the planet. I've been there. I've been completely alone, building a business, wondering, does anybody care? Do I have a friend in the world? Those feelings persist in the mind of entrepreneurs all across America. And I think that the epidemic that's going on in America today is that I believe that the most lonely, most ultra-pressured group of people is the small business entrepreneur. There are 41 million solopreneurs in the United States today. These are single people who are isolated and they're running their business alone. They have their own LLC or they're a sole proprietor, and they can be anything from blue-collar workers to white-collar workers. They can be creatives, but in the end, they all have something in common. And the common bond between these 41 solopreneurs is that they are alone. And I think that the epidemic that's going on in America today is that I believe that the most lonely, most ultra-pressured group of people is the small business entrepreneur. A stat I read, there's a survey that was conducted by a group called the Small Business Silver Lining. And it was a big survey that they put out. They polled something like 33 million small businesses. I mean, it was a huge, huge one. Big sampling. And some wild stats came out of it. 75% of small business owners are actually concerned or stated they're concerned about their mental health. The crazier stat, though, is 56% of those that were polled that actually responded had actually been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or stress-related problems by a doctor or a mental health professional. And so as I look at those stats, my belief was that there's this group of very lonely, struggling people out there, and they're the business owners, right? They're chasing the American dream. They're passionate about creation. They're trying to find freedom. In a post-pandemic world, they're fending for themselves. Many of them are working from home. And I think it's one of the loneliest groups on the planet. I think it's a group of people that are struggling. And I think that it's important to have that discussion, right? Because I think it's in today's kind of modern age, it's like everybody's talking about mental health, and mental health has become the new buzzword. And I'm not diminishing the fact that we need to talk about mental health, but it has become the new buzzword. You have pro athletes talking about mental health. You have all kinds of different groups of people talking about mental health. And while I think it is very important for us to talk about mental health, I think it's important to talk about why these issues exist more than the condition that persists because of the issue, right? Like there's a leading issue that's leading to mental health issues. Mental health issues are really the byproduct of something else. And I think that it's the social construct around the small business owner. If you think about it, there have been words that have been identified as a positive source inside of kind of our vernacular as entrepreneurs. I'll give you one, for instance, the word grind, right? Like when you say the word grind, #grind, it's like almost a rite of passage where people think that they are now becoming something greater because they're willing to grind. And grind is this concept or this idea of, putting in extra hours, working additionally more than someone else, looking at your competitor and doubling their work ethic or doubling their output. It's taking all the things you hate in life and just pushing through them. It's this concept. And I feel like we've somehow really created this demonstrative idea of what a small business entrepreneur should be, and we've glorified the pain in it versus the success in it. It's like, could you imagine if we went to a foreign country and we said, let me tell you about the actual American dream, right? Like most people coming in, from foreign countries, and we serve in 100 or so of them. When they think about America, they think, I get to go there, I get to build a business, I get to be my own boss, I get to create capitalism. If I bring enough support and ideas and innovation, I'm going to find success. Like the American population is going to love me. I'm going to make money. I'm going to create for my family. What if we actually told them the truth? What if you actually said, hey, there's 41 million people in America today that are solopreneurs who are trying to do exactly what you're trying to do. You want to come here, you want to make money, you want to follow the American dream. And they're all over medicated, overstimulated, undersupported, and they've been clinically diagnosed by a doctor or mental health professional to have anxiety or depression. Like, that's actually what's happening in America today. I wonder if it would change the dynamic of those that look at America as the potential for the American dream and freedom. Because there's a lot of people. If you took 41 million and just say 50% of them, that means that 20 million people are dissatisfied and have worked themselves into a place where their mental health is an issue. And to me, it shows that there's this massive epidemic or maybe even pandemic where we as business owners have somehow went astray, right? Like, there has been a misstep because yes, we live in a capitalistic society. If we do provide a good product or service at a great price that has value, we can succeed. But somehow, instead of focusing on that, which is what am I bringing to the marketplace, it's how am I bringing it to the marketplace. And in that, we're creating identity, right? Like, in that identity, we're becoming something in this identity that's causing pain to us, right? Like, we are the people that are overworked because it's kind of like a badge of honor. We're the people that are, it's that concept of, it's not what I do from 9 to 5, but what I do from 5 to 9. It's like all this like rhetoric around suffering and pain that somehow makes business successful. And it's just not true, right? Like, it's not true. What I find is if you just go talk to the most successful people on the planet when it comes to business, they're hyper-focused, they're very organized, and they're very intentional with their time. And most of them are not burning the candle at both ends. They're actually finding peace, they're finding success, they're finding joy, they're finding happiness. And the byproduct of that, all of those feelings and all of that world they've created is success. I love the recent study that Entrepreneur Magazine did, where they polled all these Fortune 500 CEOs. And if you juxtaposed the Fortune 500 CEOs, that the average wake up time was 6:30 a.m., the average bedtime was 10:30 a.m., the average work time was 9 hours a day, right? Like, it was like, wow, these people are just normal human beings. Versus these 41 million, it's exactly the opposite. These people are burning out. These people have anxiety. These people have drug problems, alcohol problems, coping issues, right? Like, they are pushing themselves to a limit because we've somehow glorified to this guy, hey, if you just kill yourself, you'll make it, right? But over here, the Fortune 500 guy, we're like, hey, if you focus on yourself, if you work on your business, not in your business, if you make sure you take time for yourself and make sure you're getting a good workout routine, make sure your health is it's the two opposite worlds. And it's like, you look at it and you go, well, which one's successful? Well, I'll tell you, both of them can be successful. But if part of your success metric isn't the experience of what you take from the success, you're missing a big piece of the success metric, right? Like, success isn't just a KPI, a key performance indicator, right? It's not like, if I hit this dollar amount, if I sell this many units, if I reach this many people. It has to be, if I reach this many people and I feel some sense of internal happiness and joy and fulfillment. Somehow we have to get back to the small business entrepreneur, and we have to start telling them it's okay to be successful without killing yourself, without actually hurting your mental health, without actually creating depression, anxiety, right? Dependency on things that mask the pain that you're feeling. And I think that if we just kind of walk that path, I found the one common identifier, and that is, we are not created to be alone. We're not created to be alone. Anytime you find someone who is isolated, anytime you find someone who feels unsupported, what you find is suffering, right? You find suffering. And so somehow we've told this guy, this girl, just suck it up. Like, just push through it. Just, you'll be okay. Like, just grind, just put the hours in. Like, it'll pay off someday. And I feel like that's the wrong support. I think the right support is, you can work hard if you have a support mechanism to help you work hard. You can push your ideas out there, but you should have a sounding board to make sure that you're getting good feedback. You can grind, but make sure you don't leave your family behind, right? Like, it's all this, kind of construct that society is actually pushing people towards isolation. Then we go, well, I don't know why they're suffering, well, over here, this Fortune 500 guy, we're saying like, hey, make sure you get some time in to work out. In that poll that they did for Fortune 500 CEOs, over 72% of them all worked out on a daily basis, right? You go over here to these 41 million, it's dismal, right? It's like such a very, very small percentage of these solopreneurs that actually get any physical exercise or anything like that. And so it's like we have put so much pressure on that, and then we've actually like created this like grandiose ideology about what it means to be a small business entrepreneur. And what it really is it's lonely. Like it's really dissatisfying sometimes. It creates depression. I've been there. I've been completely alone building a business, wondering, does anybody care? Do I have a friend in the world? Right? Like if you've built a business, you've felt these feelings, whether you admit it or not. Like you felt these feelings. Like those feelings persist in the mind of entrepreneurs all across America. And so I think number one, in identifying what is the root cause of it, and I think it's simply this: being alone, not having a support mechanism, not having a group, not having a tribe that you run with. I'm a part of Masterminds. At one point, I was a part of 7 Masterminds at the same time. Masterminds are a fantastic way to pull the people that are going the same direction you're going, have the same thought process, have that same fire and passion burning deep inside to build something. And they also know what it takes to actually build it. And so there's an immediate support and camaraderie with them. And I think that's why masterminds have become so prevalent, whether it's a smaller EO type group or Vistage, or, we built one called the Power Room, or Money Is. Our business partner, Dan Fleischman, has a $100 million mastermind. It's like, you've got masterminds. You got them based on the type of business you do, real estate. You got them, different groups that are like specific to electrical or plumbing or dentistry or whatever. And it's like, and I think what it is it's like our human desire to not be alone. Why would you pay $10,000 or $20,000 a year to be a part of a mastermind? I think it's because you don't want to be alone. I think because you want support. You want to know that your ideas count, they matter, they're relevant, they're good. And so number one, I think as we're kind of walking past why, I think it's because we're alone. So how do we cope with the loneliness and the stress of entrepreneurship? Number one, we have to make sure that we are not identifying with whatever the pain is, right? Like you see this all the time. When I ask a lot of business owners, like, so how's it going? What first comes out of their mouth is, well, I'm always busy. Okay, so you got the busy guy, right? Like, well, I just, struggling to find the customers. Okay, you got the guy that lacks marketing. Whatever. It's like, and instead of identifying with the change and the success that we want in the world based on the product or service we have, we identify with the effort it takes or the problem that's created by the desire. So number one, identify with the solution, or identify with who you are. You know what? It's great. Or it's really, really tough right now, but my passion really is helping other people. I don't care if you're a CPA. I don't care what it is. It's like, identify with the problem or solution versus identify with the pain that you're going through to get the problem or solution fixed, right? So stop being the busy guy. Stop being the broke guy. Stop being, right? Like, stop identifying with all of those things, because when you identify with something and it becomes your identity, then you just walk that path over and over and over again. It almost becomes a subconscious construct, right? It's like, well, I'm the guy that has no time. It's like, then because you tell yourself all the time and you identify, it's like, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm just so busy. I have no time to do anything, right? Like, I just feel like I'm working 24 hours a day. What happens is that seats in you, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You are the guy who works 24 hours a day. You're the girl that works 24 hours a day. So stop identifying with the problem or the pain, right? Number one. Number two, decide who you want to be with and who you want to be supported or helped by. This is important because we've all heard it, and it is so true. It doesn't matter if you're a teenager or if you're a business owner. The 5 people you spend the most time with will rub off on you, and you will take pieces of them with you, right? I've told my kids so oftentimes, like, you show me your friends and I'll show you who you are, right? Like, because in the end, it's like those friends that have the influence on you, you become them, you talk like them, you think like them. So you got to really carefully craft the circle that's influencing you. So vitally important. Why masterminds are where I spent a lot of my time as I was growing my businesses, because I had to be very careful, especially if you get one or two employees, because those one or two employees become your life. If you're a small business entrepreneur, you're kind of going from solopreneur to one employee, two employees. Well, guess what? The people you spend your entire life with at that moment are the one or two employees. They better be good employees, because if not, what happens is you're actually absorbing pieces of them, and then that becomes who you are. So you have to get to a higher level. How do you do that? Well, number one, you look for mentorship. You look for tribe. You look for a construct of other people with greater mindsets, greater ideas, people that are pushing past where you are, and you have to find it. It's so vitally important. I don't care if you find it in a meetup type setting, if you find it in a friends group, if you find it in a faith type setting, church. You have to find the people that you're going to allow influence into your life. If you're not carefully crafting who is influencing your life, you are already playing a losing game. I say this all the time, and I have a trash in, trash out rule. Whatever you allow in, there is something that's going to come out of your life. It doesn't matter if it's TV. It doesn't matter if it's music. It doesn't matter if it's influence or people. Whoever you allow to have time into your life, there is going to be some output. Trash in, trash out. Good in, good out, right? And so when it comes to the people that are supporting you, the people that are your tribe, the people you're identifying with, carefully craft who those 5 are. And this is hard, because sometimes the people that make you feel best are the people that are actually taking you down the wrong path. I want people to tell the truth, right? I don't want people that are like, you're doing such a good job. If I'm not doing a good job, don't support me in a poor effort, right? Go back to point number 1, identity, right? Like, if people that are in your circle, think about the 5 that you spend the most time with, if they're already the ones identifying as, I'm the overworked one, I'm the one who never gets ahead, well, you probably don't want to let that in your life if you're trying to avoid it, right? So go back to step number 1. Make sure that not only are you not identifying with it, but also create the identity of your friend. What is this one? Is this one the positive one? Is this the one that's uplifting? Is this the one that's pushing you forward? Is this the one that is giving you good feedback? It's being truthful and honest with you? Is it one that is open and supportive of a well-balanced life? Or is it someone that's pushing you to, forget everybody else, just go push hard through this? You have to make sure, number 2, you create the right tribe and influence. Number 3, lastly, which is always my favorite, is you have to anchor into purpose. Pain without purpose never has value. However, sometimes in creating a path towards purpose, there will be pain along the way. And when you get to purpose, when you start feeling the fulfillment of some purposeful thing coming out of your life, all of a sudden the pain becomes a point of reference that gives you even greater joy or fulfillment. Let me just break that down, right? So you take a bodybuilder. Bodybuilder is going to go to this competition, right? And if that bodybuilder, if their purpose, like let's say their purpose, and I'm not even trying to talk about it like an altruistic purpose, like I'm going to save the world or feed orphans. I'm just talking about like a purpose. Like, what is my intentional purpose at the end? I'm going to win this competition, right? Well, if a bodybuilder just literally gets into the grind and they're just like eating 6,000 calories a day and, all this protein, and then they're working out and killing themselves and in the gym 2 or 3 times a day and putting themselves through all this rigorous, like kind of effort. And then they just get stuck in that loop for 10 years with no competition, right? Like, it's just hurting them, right? But if they get to and they feel that, and they're in the gym in the morning and they've got pain, they hate it, and it feels horrible. And, they feel like, is it worth it? But then they get to the competition, and then all of a sudden you win. Now you actually look back on the pain, and it actually heightens the actual fulfillment you felt in the purpose. So pain without purpose ultimately is just putting you into a position where I believe it's very detrimental to your mental health. But if you can tie into some sort of purpose, all of a sudden your pain becomes a very necessary part of the journey, right? Because there's always going to be pain and growth, right? And you can only really control a few things. Now you can control how long you're going to stay under it. You can control what your perception of the pain is. But in the end, if you tie it to purpose, then in the payoff, the pain really becomes powerful, right? And so in the pain, right, we anchor it in purpose. And then in the end, the payoff becomes very powerful, right? And that's what we want. We don't want pain that just is existing without payoff. How do you get it to payoff, right? Go back through the 3, right? Number one, we have to make sure we are choosing the right identity. Number two, we have to choose our tribe or those people that are ultimately influencing us. And number three, we have to anchor it into purpose. If small business solopreneurs would take those 3 steps today, I think we could look at this 56% that have been clinically diagnosed with depression, and we probably could have put them on a different path. So let's start with you, right? Like, you're out there, you're building your business alone. Are you willing to make a change? Or do you like the feeling? And I think that I've been addicted to that feeling in the past where it's like, well, I'm just grinding, like, because I feel some level of satisfaction in giving my life to something because maybe I'm not getting the satisfaction of success, $1 or whatever that is. And so the only satisfaction and success I have is this feeling of at least I worked hard. At least I killed myself to get here. And can I say that that's a fool's errand, and that's a game that is always going to run out on you.
I love that point. I had a lot of questions, and I'm just going to throw some out.
Sure.
Do you think this is uniquely a United States issue?
I think the U.S. definitely has a grip on this concept. I can't say that it doesn't exist outside of the U.S., but having traveled and watching people build businesses outside of the U.S., we were in Mexico. And you're on the side of a road in Guadalajara, Mexico, and you see these people sitting out there at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, still selling fruit to the general population that's willing to walk by. And they've probably already sat there for 13, 14 hours, right? You go to the taco stand and they're there till midnight serving tacos. There's such a privilege to earn and to live and to fend for yourself in a third world country. It's like, I don't even think they oftentimes think about these things, right? Like, there's a little bit of entitlement in the US, and I think it's part of like, well, we're Americans, so we have this right to do business, and it should just be successful. We put enough time and effort into it. But again, I think it goes back to where they have a purpose, and I think oftentimes their purpose is survival. Their purpose is like feeding their family. Their purpose is very different than ours is. Where I think in the US, and this is why I think the US has such a grip on it, is I think go back to the identity thing. I think it's like we struggle with identity. So our identity is like the work we do or the business we have or the logo that is tied to our business. It's like we're so enamored with titles here. I like titles to a degree that it helps people navigate the landscape of business, but it's like I hate titles for the entitlement that it brings. You go back to a taco shop that we were just at in Mexico, and you ask, like, who's the boss here? Like there's no titles, right? Like this guy's making chicken, this guy's making pork, this guy's making steak. It's like this guy's making the tortillas. It's just happy to be working, and they're working twice the amount of hours. And I don't know that they're having the same mental health issues that we are here. And I think it has everything to do with identity.
Growing takes effort and a certain amount of pain. So when do you hit the point of like diminishing return?
Mm-hmm.
Is that an individual point? Like, how can people regulate for themselves?
Yeah. So I call this the Perseverance Continuum. Okay. There's really 4 things that happen as we build a business. Number 1, there's pain. We don't know how much pain it's going to take to actually get a business off the ground. We next have what I call perseverance, right? Perseverance is like how long you have to stay under the pain. The next thing is like success, right? Or at least like, the payoff. And then kind of like slid in between there is what I would call the 3rd/4th, which would be fear, right? So like, if you kind of like follow this pathway, it'd be like, you have pain, you have perseverance, you have fear, you have success, right? Success and perseverance have an interesting relationship, but the most important thing about this idea is that in the perseverance continuum, you can only control 2 things, and 2 things you can't control. The problem is that people, they focus hyper on the things they can't control. So number 1, you cannot control pain, right? You don't know how long it's going to take you to get the business off the ground. You don't know how long it's going to take for somebody to accept your idea or your product or your service. Can you control perseverance? Yeah, you get to decide how long you stay under the weight. Next, fear. Can you control fear? Yes, you control fear by gaining knowledge. Can you control success? No. So at the start and the stop, right? You can't control pain. You can't control success. What you can control in the middle is number one, you can control perseverance, how long I'm going to stay under the pain. And number two, you can control how much fear you have around the potential fear of loss, right? And so I always tell entrepreneurs to focus on 2, not 4, right? The pain is not something you should be focusing on. That goes back to identity, right? It's just going to take what it's going to take. What you should be doing is number one, focusing on the perseverance, how long it can stand to the weight. This is where a lot of people make massive mistakes in building businesses, is they make lots of poor decisions that actually cause the weight to get heavier versus giving themselves a longer pathway. Like for instance, I always talk about the 5 phases of business. When you're in startup and perseverance phase, what you want to do is you want to elongate your ability to stay under perseverance, right? Like you want to give yourself a longer runway. How do I do that? Well, I limit my expenses. I limit my expectations. I'm willing to live on a restricted budget, like all these things, right? Because then what happens is the load is lighter, which allows you to carry it longer. So what you do in a small business is you stop focusing on how painful it is, and you actually just create this tolerance level and reduce the amount of pain, as much pain as possible, instead of adding to it. Like a person that starts a business and they even start to feel some level of success, and even though they're still in kind of perseverance, they're like, oh, I'm going to go buy a house. And it's like all of a sudden now their mortgage goes higher. I'm going to go buy a car. And now their payment's higher. I got to go have this new cell phone. It's like, and what they're doing is they're actually reducing the amount of time that they can stay under the pain. And subsequently, they're creating more fear because now they know that the timeline is shorter, which then creates it's like the fear builds up. And it's like all of a sudden now the fear is stronger, it's heavier. And the way to overcome fear is always knowledge, right? Like the ability to overcome fear today in the United States should be the goal of so many entrepreneurs. You can get on YouTube and you can watch so much content specific to your type of business and what you're doing. It's so accessible to watch people on online and social media and find out how they're getting to success. And there's so much written and so much content out there on every different type of business. Absorbing knowledge will also reduce the fear. And then success comes. You can't control when success comes. You don't know when you're going to hit that tipping point. You just don't know. So what you do is you control what you can control, and you stop worrying about pain and success. You focus on the actual perseverance and fear.
It makes a lot of sense. At one point, I thought of comparison as the thief of happiness, and how that probably plays into the beginning part of that.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's great. I mean, it's like I think that's part of what we get as American business people is we're almost forced to compare ourselves with everyone, and it's dangerous, right? Like comparison is the thief of happiness. Like comparison is something that robs joy from you, because all of a sudden you're not living your experience, you're living their experience. And when you're living someone else's experience, it's like it's not real anyways. And so we have to be very careful not to allow comparison to begin to create the identity, right? Like it's so easy. It's like it's the 4-minute mile, right? It's like, well, no one can do that. And then all of a sudden someone does, and then everyone can do that. And it's like, I think that oftentimes in business, we're looking at that model of like, well, no one can do it. No one's had success here. Like it took this guy 20 years to get his practice or business off the ground. How could I do it in 1 year? And I think that comparison's a dangerous game.
Definitely. Choosing tribe and community. Have you ever heard of the book? I think it's Tribe by Sebastian Junger.
Mm-hmm.
While you were talking, I was just thinking about that because he identifies the issue of just general American mental health to like
Right.
a total lack of community.
Right.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
I think the more we get pushed towards online, the smaller our communities get.
Yeah. It is the great irony. It's like the more you focus on social, the more you get this dopamine hit of I'm tied to millions of people, but in reality you have zero connection, right? It's like it's the falsehood of social. It's like because I DM'd with somebody, I'm connected. It's like you're not really connected. Like you don't know each other. You can't feel and sense and create energy between the two of you. It's a lonely place. And I think that social media and online has created an even lonelier world. I was telling someone the other day that I feel like social media is actually like sweet and low. It's like a horrible substitute for relationship, but it gives you the sense that it's real. And then in the end, you found out it gave you cancer all along. It's like all of a sudden, it's like this horrible thing that you put into your body, right? I feel like that's social media. It's like sweet and low.
Super accurate. Do you have any challenge for any listeners out there who might be experiencing this? Any call to action?
I think the call to action is to go back and truthfully determine what your identity is, and you may have to ask someone else. You need to find a true and honest friend who's willing to say it, because sometimes our own blind spot is we believe we present ourselves a certain way, and an emotionally intelligent person will not only introspectively look back at like how have I identified myself, but they'll actually go ask somebody to confirm that, right? So that there's cohesion there in our thought. And I think it's important for everyone to find someone who will just give you honest feedback. How do I identify? Do I identify as somebody that's, again, go back through all the identities. Number two, I think it's like you really do have to find a tribe, right? Like you have to find a tribe. You have to find someone that you can connect with, connect to. Maybe it starts with social, maybe it starts with online, but it's like it's so much greater if it's in person, right? Like the meetups and masterminds and business groups and even the chamber of commerce. Like go to your local chamber of commerce, find other people that are in your community just struggling with who and what they're doing, and become a support mechanism for them. And really then, craft that what 5 people do I want to be. So my big challenge would be number one, go find out how you identify. Whether you believe it or not, people know who you identify as. Like they know who you are, right? Like, and you have a brand, and your brand is their experience with you. That'd be the first one. Number two, get very, very particular about who you let in your life. Like who's your 5. Thanks so much for being a part of the podcast and for listening today. I'd love to connect with you further, and you can connect with me on social media at Eddie Wilson Official on any of the social media channels.